Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing, Inc.
Technical problems force extended voting hours in the Bahamas elections. That's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Wednesday, May 10. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. Voters in some parts of the Bahamas are still casting their ballots at this hour despite a scheduled 6 p.m. close of polls on Wednesday. And that's because voting had to be extended by up to 2 hours in at least 2 constituencies because of unspecified technical problems. The affected constituencies were Elizabeth and Seabreeze. Parliamentary Commissioner Charles Albury stressed that the issue was not any irregularity in the electoral process, but technical problems, although he did not specify exactly what the challenges were. He said voting had to be suspended in Elizabeth to resolve problems related to a few ballots. After it resumed, the voting hours were extended to 6:15 p.m., except for one polling division in the constituency where people will be allowed to vote until 8:15. In the Seabreeze constituency, voting was also suspended to resolve some issues, and voting will now be allowed in one of the polling divisions for an additional 2 hours. That's until 8 p.m. An estimated 180,000 people are registered to vote in the general election, with the Progressive Liberal Party seeking to hold on to power in the 41-member parliament. The party is being challenged by the main opposition Free National Movement led by Dr. Hubert Minnis, as well as minority opposition Democratic National Alliance led by Branfield McCartney. The general election is being observed by international and regional observers, including the Organization of American States, the 15-member Caribbean Community, and the United States. And still in the Bahamas, Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell is refuting a claim that the United States has pulled private investors out of the country and the Chinese now owns the government. The claim was made by a Fox News radio commentator, and Mitchell is not taking it lightly.
The Fox News commentator is obviously suffering from a very serious problem of ignorance. First, he should know that the United States as a government does not invest in the private sector or in private sector projects in countries. U.S. investors, private citizens and corporations continue to be by far the largest foreign investors in the Bahamas. Secondly, the Chinese government has no hold on the Bahamas or the government of the Bahamas. That is nonsense and patent rubbish.
An opposition politician in Antigua and Barbuda has been charged with intimidation and threatening to kill high-ranking members of government. 28 charges have been filed by police against caretaker for the opposition United Progressive Party, George Weiner. A controversial video linked to his political campaign surfaced 6 months ago on social media. It showed images purporting to cause harm to members of the Gaston Brown-led administration. Following a lengthy investigation, police have now filed charges against Weiner under the Electronics Crimes Act. But Assistant Police Commissioner Atlee Rodney says he will not be arrested.
They are done summarily. It's a magistrate court matter and they are proceeding by summons. That means he was not arrested and taken before the court, but he will be receiving summons from the magistrate court as it relates to those offenses.
ACP Rodney indicated why there have been 28 charges.
There were 14 individuals on that videotape. So 2 charges, one of intimidation and one of threat. And so you find each individual two charges, so that's why the number is 28.
The video shows members of the ABLP administration, including Prime Minister the Honorable Gaston Brown, in the crosshairs of a sniper's rifle. It was then mixed with sights and the sounds of gunfire on a battlefield. It was roundly condemned in a motion brought to the Parliament by the Prime Minister on December 8 last year. This is what he had indicated then.
Never in the history of our country have we witnessed such a naked threat of terrorism. Never in the conduct of political rivalry in this nation have we seen such a wanton call to commit murder. The video has all the overtones of similar videos produced by ISIS, the most notorious terrorist organization in the world.
In addition to the Prime Minister, other persons had suggested it was a terrorist video. I asked ACP Rodney whether the police had considered this angle.
I think you have to, as we say, we follow the evidence. The evidence might more be of threats and intimidation than a terrorist act of itself. So I think we had to go along as the evidence leaders.
He indicated it's not the first time persons have been charged under the Electronic Crimes Act, especially in cases where social media has been used to issue threats. Wenner has been charged some 6 months after the video's release. Police say it has taken this amount of time because they were carefully collating their evidence, and besides, several persons had to be interviewed.
And that report was from Garfield Burford of ABS News in Antigua and Barbuda. The Bermuda government says it will not challenge the Supreme Court ruling handed down last Friday that paves the way for same-sex marriage. Home Affairs Minister Patricia Gordon Pamplin says after receiving legal advice, government had decided it will not lodge any appeal and will instead implement the necessary steps to ensure compliance with the judgment. Gordon Pamplin says while it would be difficult to achieve widespread support for the new ruling, the government recognizes that as a community, Bermudans must be able to have open and honest conversation that would help to encourage awareness, understanding, tolerance and respect for each other. Last week, in what was described as a landmark judgment, the Bermuda Supreme Court ruled in favor of Bermudan Winston Goodwin and his Canadian partner Greg DeRoche being granted a license to be married on the island. This after the couple's application was denied by the Registrar General a year ago. After hearing the case filed by attorney Mark Pettingill, a former attorney general, the court concluded that common law discriminates against same-sex couples by excluding them from marriage. The Caribbean Court of Justice has ordered the Guyana government to refund Trinidad-based beverage company SM Jalil and its subsidiary in Guyana the money they paid in an environmental tax applied to imported products packaged under non-recyclable material. In delivering the judgment in Port of Spain on Tuesday, the CCJ ruled that the tax was illegal and contrary to the principles of the CARICOM single market and economy, since it was only applied to goods imported into Guyana and not to similar items produced by local manufacturers. CCJ President Sir Dennis Byron said Guyana had been unjustly enriched at the expense of the beverage companies. He said the tax did not promote cross-border trade, but tended to frustrate free movement of goods, distorted competition, and discriminated against the companies who should have been protected as belonging to CARICOM. Only non-Guyanese companies, including those from sister CARICOM countries, had been required to pay the 10 Guyana dollars environmental tax on all non-returnable containers. The court ordered Guyana to pay back SM Jalil and Guyana Beverages Inc. the monies they paid in the environmental tax between March 7th, 2011 and August 7th, 2015, along with interest at 4% per annum from the date of judgment. Guyana also has to pay 70% of the cost of the court proceedings. Sir Dennis also ordered Guyana to file with the CCJ on or before December 9th this year a report on its compliance of those orders unless the companies do so before. And still to come in Caribbean Newsline, St. Kitts Prime Minister stands his ground in the controversy concerning 2 Chinese nationals in the country who are wanted by Interpol. That story and more when we return. Do stay with us.
Chatting CARICOM, a 4-part series on the status of the regional integration process. Your chance to get answers.
We as a small island, how do we factor into that bigger picture?
Why is the process taking so long?
While there is liberty to move among the islands, you still have some level of restriction.
Chatting CARICOM also gives you updates on recent CARICOM projects.
We're seeking more and more to engage all our partners in moving forward for the development of our region.
We have come a very long way since we started.
Join the Caribbean community and CaribVision for Chatting CARICOM, a community for all. Coming soon.
Follow your heart to the 21st edition of the St. Kitts Music Festival from the 22nd to the 24th of June, featuring Shabaranks, Ultimate Rejects, The Boozman, Mobado, Jack Pure, DJ Private Riot, and back together again, Square One. Also performing Third Word, Voice, King Mighty Chalk Dust, Credence Clearwater Revisited, Ed Robinson, Ricardo Drew, Tedison John, Felicia Ross, Brianna D, Lyrical, and Goo Goo Dolls. For more information, log on to www.stkitsmusicfestival.net.
Ready. It's another episode. When we out on the road, this is what we love to celebrate, to celebrate. This is not Hollywood. No, we don't come out the road. Drink, drink, drink.
King Baba and Nikita. Every fact that a boy keep on calling me wrong name, but that's okay, 'cause that's my bitch. I don't understand how wearing the name tag on me. Don't know what to say, he's still calling me wrong name. Don't get vexed with me. Don't say that.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris is maintaining that the Twin Island Federation is not a haven for criminals. In an address to the nation on Tuesday night, he reiterated that St. Kitts and Nevis is not being hostile to requests from the Republic of China for the extradition of 2 Chinese nationals on allegations that they defrauded a Chinese business of over $100,000.
I wish to make it clear that I reject in the strongest terms the allegation that my government is harboring any fugitives in our country. I categorically deny as well the assertion that my government is somehow failing to cooperate with a request with any country as mandated by law. I state further that no evidence has been provided to law enforcement or otherwise that any public official has been offered or has received any money for the protection in this matter.
Dr. Harris blamed the Denzel Douglas administration for the current fiasco, saying that Interpol had informed Dr. Douglas while he was Prime Minister and head of national security in 2014, but he did nothing about it. But the Prime Minister says investigations are being conducted with a view to ensuring that the matter is being dealt with according to the laws of the Federation, as the individuals in question are now citizens.
We cannot and will not simply allow our sovereignty and our laws to be trampled upon by permitting any nation to attempt to engage in forced rendition of any citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis from our shores. Each and every citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis is entitled to the full protection of the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis. They are entitled to that protection not some of the time or at the whim of any government. They are indeed entitled to that protection all, I repeat, all of the time.
The Central Bank of Barbados is tightening monetary policy. Acting Governor Cleveson Haynes made the announcement at a media brief on Tuesday. He said effective June 15th, commercial banks operating in Barbados will have to hold a higher percentage of government bonds and other promissory certificates than they currently do. They'll be required to hold 15% of their deposits in stipulated securities.
The increase will require banks now to hold 15% of their domestic deposits in stipulated securities with effect from June 15, 2017. This is the first increase since 2007 when the ratio was lowered to 10%. The cash reserve requirement for commercial banks remains unchanged at 5%.
No explanation has been given for the 5% increase or how depositors would be affected. And as you heard the governor say, this is the first increase to the securities reserve requirement since 2007 when the ratio was lowered to 10%. Haynes explained that the cash reserves and the securities requirement were among the policy options available to the bank, and now is a good time to exercise its prerogative. Jamaica's Commerce Minister Carl Samuda has declared the government will not be pushed into making hasty decisions related to the granting of license for the cultivation and processing of ganja. He says the government is obligated to ensure the highest level of due diligence. Samuda made the comments following his announcement on Tuesday that approval has been given for the granting of 2 ganja licenses. The Cannabis Licensing Authority last week granted the approval for the Tier 1 cultivator and the Tier 1 processor license. Tier 1 cultivator license offer farmers of up to 1 acre, and Tier 1 processor license offer the processing of ganja for medical, scientific, and therapeutic purposes, including the manufacturing of ganja-based products. Both represent the smallest scale of operation within the legal licensing framework. Samuda said up to this month, the Cannabis Licensing Authority received 212 applications from 86 individuals for license. 2 applications were later withdrawn. Now to news from our partners over at France Carré Broadcast. France's overseas territories are considering the consequences of the recently concluded elections. On Sunday, Emmanuel Macron became the 8th president of the French Republic by beating Marine Le Pen with 66% of votes. Now the French Caribbean territories are waiting to see if President-elect Macron will fulfill his elections promise. We get more in this special report.
Tout le monde nous disait que c'était impossible.
Everybody told us it was impossible.
Mais ils ne connaissaient pas la France.
But they didn't know the France. With more than 65% of the votes, Emmanuel Macron is elected President of the Republic for the greatest happiness of the activists. Very happy with the victory of Emmanuel Macron, very happy. We worked well, and here is the result, 65. It's good. I think that with these results, people will mobilize a little more, and I remain confident enough to have a majority to be able to govern. Elected with more than 77% of votes on our island, the militants expect that the future head of state will implement the major promise for Martinique very quickly. The first major, which seems to me to be extremely important, and which it has announced that it will do the foundations of the overseas, and we are waiting for the En Marche movement to be able to accompany the first meeting of the overseas, and especially for Martinique. Economic development, agriculture, health and safety. Emmanuel Macron made many promises for overseas. It's in last December that Emmanuel Macron came to Martinique. The new president indicates that the strategies will not be the same according to the overseas territories. When we are in Guadeloupe or Martinique, we don't have the same challenges as in French Guiana or in Polynesia. It's not true. The geographical zones have their own dynamics. The territorial constraints are not the same. The problems of sectors are not the same. We have a subject sovereign energy and food in Guadeloupe and Martinique that we have, for example, not at all in La Réunion. Another point of the program, the adaptation of the common law to overseas collectivities. In concrete terms, institutions would have more powers to adapt the regulation adaptation to local realities. In legal terms, I would like to see that we can delegate regulation to the territories and give them much more flexibility. I began to discuss it with several presidents of regions, President Chalus in Guadeloupe, Alexander in French Guiana, and I will continue with all those who are ready to go in this direction.
We thank our partners over at France Carré Broadcast for that special report. And ahead in Newsline Sport, Pakistan avert a potential batting meltdown on the opening day of the final test against West Indies. Do stay with us. Sport is next.
Your heart to the 21st edition of the St. Kitts Music Festival from the 22nd to the 24th of June, featuring Shabaranks, Ultimate Rejects, Biboozman, Mobado, Jack Pure, DJ Private Riot, and back together again, Square One. Also performing Third Word, Voice, King Mighty Chalk Dust, Credence Clearwater Revisited, Ed Robinson, Ricardo Drew, Teddyson John, Felicia Ross, Brianna D, Lyrical, and Goo Goo Dolls. For more information, log on to www.stkitsmusicfestival.net.
Ready. It's another episode. When we out on the road, this is what we love to celebrate, to celebrate. This is not Hollywood. No, we don't come out the road. Drink, drink, drink. King Baba and the guitar. Every fact that I go, you keep on calling me wrong name. But that's okay, 'cause that's my babe. I don't understand how we're in the name tag on me. You know what to say, you still calling me wrong name. Don't get vexed with me. Don't say that.
In a place where legends start, the beach is just the beginning. So live a little for the exhilaration and the color of every moment, where time is and life is a spirited event. Immerse yourself in the culture, the music, the people, the island. Love Antigua and Barbuda. Embrace an experience that leaves you breathless, from cricket to sailing week to carnival and more. Antigua and Barbuda, the beach is just the beginning.
A patient knockoff 85 from Azhar Ali helped Pakistan avoid what could have been another baton meltdown on the opening day of the third and final test at Windsor Park on Wednesday. The visitors closed the day's play on 169 for 2. Azhar played positively and has so far struck 7 fours and 2 sixes in a 219-ball knock, while veteran Babar Azam scored a half century of 125 balls. The West Indies made early inroads into the wicket-taking with Shan Masood out for 9 in the 12th over. Alzari Joseph and Roston Chase took 1 wicket each. Here are the highlights of the final session of play.
Devendra Bishu should have had Azam on the resumption. Another catch put down by the West Indies. He was on 28 at the time. Shane Dowrich, the culprit, and he was clearly being encouraged, pitching in the right area outside the line of the off stump. But when he was too short, he was punished. All this teasing with that flight. Still, Pakistan were able to progress as a rally towards a half century. Just the wayward line helping him to accelerate a bit, and the extra pace. Not too much on this pitch, but the extra effort of the fast bowlers bringing him some runs. Babar Azam now reached a half century as well after a pair in the last test in Barbados, and then a moment of indecision. Wasn't sure what he wanted to do and offered catching practice virtually to first slip, and then a tremendous reception for Yunus Khan. Good to see the spirit between the two teams welcoming Yunus Khan for his farewell test match. May not be his farewell innings, there might be a second innings to be played. In the meantime, Azhar Ali growing in confidence, even though he was discomforted by that short ball. More frustration for Shannon Gabriel. Certainly took a liking to Roston Chase, had a couple of sixes off him in the morning session, and then with the artificial light taking over.
Afghanistan selectors have opted for experience in 2 squads chosen to tour West Indies for 3 one-day internationals and T20 internationals next month. Captain Askar Stanasgi, Najibullah Zadran, Mohammed Nabi and Gulbadin Naib, all fixtures in the national side's setup in recent years, have been included in both squads for the June 2 to 14 limited overs series. Missing, however, is Afghanistan's leading batsman and opener Mohammad Shahzad, who was recently banned by the International Cricket Council after testing positive for a banned substance in January. In his absence, Staniksa will shoulder much of the responsibility of the batting. He has been in good form this year with a first-class 100 and an one-day international 100 against Ireland last March. The ACB also said the squad would spend just over 2 weeks in India preparing for the West Indies assignment. The team will travel to India on May 11 and will have training sessions for 15 days prior to both series in the Caribbean. The T20 series will be played at Warner Park in St. Kitts from June 2 to 5, with the one-day international series set for the Darren Sammy National Stadium in St. Lucia from June 9 to 14. Still in cricket, West Indies all-rounder Carlos Brathwaite yet again failed to make an impression on the Indian Premier League, but his Delhi Daredevils still managed to pull off a 2-wicket win over Dwayne Smith's Gujarat Lions on Wednesday. Playing in one of his second match in this season, Brathwaite took 1 wicket from 4 overs, which cost 38 runs, as the Lions rallied to an impressive 195 for 5 after being sent in at Green Park. Australian Aaron Finch smashed a top score of 69 from 39 balls, while wicketkeeper Danish Karthik chipped in with 40 before holding out to long on in the 17th over of Brathwaite. Opener Smith made 8 before falling via the run-out route, failing to beat a throw from square leg to the non-striker's end as he attempted a quick single. In reply, Daredevils rode on a super 96 to reach their target with 2 balls remaining. They were sliding at 15 for 2 until Ian arrived to strike 15 balls. That's 15 fours and 2 sixes in a 57-ball knock to rally the innings. And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc.
Have you or someone you know been diagnosed with diabetes? If so, it is important that you know about Glucerna. Glucerna is a nutritional supplement for people with diabetes and contains Carb Steady, which helps minimize blood sugar spikes. Manage your diabetes with Glucerna. Glucerna, nutrition for people with diabetes, designed for you.
Ravenel's Resort and Conference Center is the mecca of conferences in the island of Tobago. The state-of-the-art facility caters to executive forums, weddings, banquets, training, elegant dining, and tranquil accommodations. Guests at Ravenel's Resort can choose from self-catering, standard, deluxe, and executive rooms. Sit at the poolside and savor the ambience of nature, or enjoy a sumptuous meal on the terrace and inside a Bouvardia restaurant. Let's go to Ravenel's Resort and Conference Center, the tranquil Caribbean Resort. Call 868-639-9666 or visit our website at www.rovenelsresorttobago.com.
In a place where legends start, the beach is just the beginning. So live a little for the exhilaration and the color of every moment, where time is and life is a spirited event. Immerse yourself in the culture, the music, the people, the island. Love Antigua and Barbuda. Embrace an experience that leaves you breathless, from cricket to sailing week to carnival and more. Antigua and Barbuda, the beach is just the beginning.
Again, the major developments of this day: technical problems force extended voting hours in the Bahamas elections, and in sport, Pakistan avert a potential batting meltdown on the opening day of the final test against West Indies. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, log on to KanaNews.com. We'll be back here again tomorrow. But from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and do have yourselves a good night.